I'm Lisa Storey. I currently work for Middlesbrough Council as Creative Programmes Manager. My background varies quite a lot from, in recent years, very much event focused. So I produce and deliver quite a lot of events in Middlesbrough. So I work on kind of all the magical Middlesbrough parades, and our team looks after Orange Pape, and we do Middlesbrough Mailer. So I sit within the committee for Middlesbrough Mailer, and I do the event management for that. On another hat, I do a lot of costume design still, and sort of structural design stuff for other people. Obviously, as I get busier and busier with the stuff for the council, that kind of drops a little bit, but we do special projects where it's just amazing that I get to work with so many different people and so many different companies in Teesside, and I feel really, really privileged that I get to kind of, like, say, 1 minute I'll be working with the likes of Stella Projects, then I can get to work with, we're doing stuff with obviously Middlesbrough Art Weekend at the minute, and the Cultural Partnership, and yeah, so it's just brilliant because we just get to work with everybody.
So where did it all begin for you? What has been your pathway from did it start as a kid?
So as a child, that's all I did, cutting out bits of paper and making God knows what, and I've always kind of had a path in the arts, and my parents have always kind of just been really, really supportive of that. And I think, my mum and dad, they've come from like production manager jobs and all that type of stuff, and they're thinking, what's she going to do? How's she going to get a job in the arts? And but even though they didn't have a clue how I'd get there, they still were really, really supportive of that. So I was really blessed in that situation, really. And then I had a fantastic art teacher at school who told me all about CCAD, and that how I must go to that one because it was brilliant, and really helped me sort of focus on what I needed to do. So I went to CCAD, and I actually did like GMBQ in advanced in art because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I loved art, and I loved all aspects of it. And then I actually went into fashion and photography randomly, did 2 years of that, and then decided that I wanted to go into costume. Fashion was too restrictive for me. They wanted you to put buttons and zips where I didn't want to put them, and it just wasn't creative enough for me. So I had a look around of what was going on and found the costume course, and it was just amazing to be able to do costume prop sets. So went into that and just kind of, yes, just blew me away. I loved it, and it kind of just changed my whole opinion on that was right for me, because it was just the more creative. Like, you could make anything into a piece of costume for somebody to wear. You could be, massive structures, anything. You can make anything out of a bit of fabric, and that's what I loved. That was my passion. And then from there, I really, really lucky that I managed to get in with a company called Bravura. They're a northeast-based company, and at the time when I was graduating, they took on a lot of new graduates and sort of costume people, and I got in working with them on surf and on sort of Christmas parades and all sorts of different creative sort of very parade, very carnival-esque stuff. And that ended up being a lot of what I did. So for a long time, I focused on doing costume and structures for carnivals, and then I went into schools and I did a lot of artist in residency programs and working with our local communities. So I spent quite a bit of time really kind of doing lots of different things with our communities. So it was very, very focused on sort of, even with parades and carnivals, even though you had amazing inspirational stuff, you always worked with the community. And I just love that mechanism. And carnival, for me, that it just has that mechanism that no other art form has. It can bring so many different communities together working on one focused project to create this huge spectacular. So I just, that got it for me, and that was my heart. I loved that. And then as I was kind of working in carnival, I found that I loved the kind of the organisational side of it as well, and the direction side of it too. So I did a small commission for Middlesbrough Council on Animex, making costumes for the new Animex pieces. And at the time, they didn't have a huge budget, so I did a bit of a swapsy with them, where they allowed me, they paid me some money, and then they allowed me to go on one of their courses for free, which obviously was quite expensive. So did a bit of a skill swap there, and from there did a bit more about kind of community engagement and learning, and that really helped me kind of form sort of my kind of knowledge base upon, you know, arts and community learning. And then I got a paid graduate internship with, it was organised by Tees Valley Arts and the local authorities. They had a huge gap in arts managers in the Tees Valley, so they got an Arts Council funded grant to pay for 5 graduate creatives to help them basically learn skills to then become arts managers as well, because they just felt that there was a huge gap in the area and they needed more freelance people to be able to do these jobs. So I got one of the positions and I got placed with Redcar Council, and at the time, really, really small council. And even though it was a graduate placement, I ended up doing sort of way more, and you know, they really gave me the freedom to sort of develop festivals, and we developed like the puppetry festival over there, and we did outdoor theatre festivals, and they really they helped me write a grant to do some extended school stuff, to go out into the communities and really extend art projects out into Redcar and Cleveland. And so it was brilliant. It's, you know, a year of doing that, and then from there I ended up, I guess, adding another string to my bow, that I did freelance consultancy and project management, where I was still doing the costume stuff, still doing the parade stuff, still doing the creative workshops and engagement stuff, and then doing arts management stuff as well. So I ended up kind of working across the Northeast, doing quite specialist projects, everything from, I don't know if you know it, Borough Buzz, and that was kind of a using arts and creativity to work with kids who were at risk of offending. So that was amazing, because you got to work with so many different multi-agencies, like, you know, working with, you know, arts and the police and the fire brigade, and it really sort of helped me kind of understand what arts can do and what creativity can do across not just the cultural platforms, but across kind of that wider spectrum. So yeah, I did loads and loads of stuff like that for years, and then I ended up getting a job doing audience development for cultural services and the town hall specifically. So again, it was a brand new job, so I was able to kind of look at what I thought the weaknesses were in the cultural services and what we needed to develop. So, you know, they did a really small parade, they did a really small reindeer parade, and I took that on board, and obviously now it's quite an established parade for young people and families in Middlesbrough, so that's grown from 10 years, and I was able to kind of develop family programming in the town hall, and look at how we developed outdoor theatre, and look at how we developed all our kind of engagement and creative works within the service. So, and then I ended up getting more and more involved in the event side of things, and then sort of again changed roles where I was doing a lot of more events, bigger events. So, you know, again going from that creative direction of, you know, developing carnivals, to then learning about road closures and learning about counter-terrorism and fundraising. And I think it's just, I've been really, really lucky that I've been around some amazing people who've been just an inspiration to teach me all these weird and wonderful things that help bring projects together. And then just found out, you know, I am where I am now because I have that, I guess, that mixed knowledge of, from the freelance consultancy to arts management and all sorts of different things that I look after, and I look after obviously events team. I say the events team in Middlesbrough because we're currently recruiting. We have no events team at the moment, so it's all me. And then I look after sort of any creative projects that happen from the council side of things. And I guess just being that kind of conduit between other companies that want to develop stuff for the council and on our land and stuff as well. So that's me.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. That's quite a ride. And I think really I've had quite a similar journey because I've always been like, you know, private assistant and executive assistant, and all these, I've done events organisation
Yeah.
and seminars for like pharmaceutical companies, and God,
Twists and turns, doing all sorts.
But it's really helped in being able to bring all that to the arts. So I'm going to ask you some questions that I don't know if you can answer, if you're allowed to answer.
I will try.
I'm just really interested in, like, over the next 5-10 years, where you'd like to see things going, where you think it's possible for things to go, and any plans that are already in place for, I suppose, in the shorter term, maybe forever. What if COVID never goes away? Possibilities for that, but more really about what Teesside, the Tees area, what ambitions we can have, what way we should be moving towards. If you could dream a little, where would we go? Practically, where might we go? Interested to know if you can share some thoughts on that.
So at the minute, we're looking at developing a new strategy, cultural strategy for the town, with COVID in mind, with a lot of things that we do. We want to be, I guess, help that recovery and help people to see how we can still be ambitious and still be inspirational amongst all of this. It's a really, really difficult process, and me being quite strange, I haven't liked the challenge of COVID, but it's given us new skills, and it's helped us to see how quickly we can adapt and how quickly we can change things up. And it's been amazing to see people's reactions to COVID and people's ability to just change things up and make things happen, even in sort of the face of adversity. So we're looking at what that roadmap looks like for everybody. And I think here in Middlesbrough, even throughout COVID, we have been praised the fact that we haven't stopped. We've still been continuing, and we've still been pushing forward. And I think that is our attitude, that we can still do it and we can still make it happen. And we want to still be making sure that we're still kind of aiming for that really aspirational, amazing things to happen. And we have I'd say new, but fairly new head of service, who's just so positive and inspirational and really wants to see things happen. And, she really wants to make sure that Middlesbrough can work with, the local, the regional, the national, the international companies. And I guess we're working with a few companies that we haven't announced things yet, because I don't want us to announce it, because it's obviously some local companies who are delivering some really exciting stuff for us. We've been working on a project for quite some time that was started by the Town Centre Initiative, and Culture brought some money together to look at some wider public art installations, and how we kind of reimagine the high street, and how we reimagine the spaces that we frequent, I guess. The high streets have had to change and will have to change for a long time with COVID. And so that's going to be one of our focuses, on how do we make the high street still a really imaginative place for people to go? How do we make it something that they want to come into town and want to come and visit us and still be part of the venues? And so it was a piece of work that Gordon Dalton started, and we're obviously trying to continue that through COVID and make it work, and kind of reimagine that to kind of still make it fit within this COVID remit. And again, with events, we still want big events to happen. So even, like the likes of Mela, for example, we have huge aspirations to become more nationally renowned, to make sure that we have that national profile. That's been running now for 31 years. So, it's one of our longest running events in Middlesbrough. And, it's always suffered not from lack of an imagination and not from lack of aspiration, but, they've never quite got the money that some of these other big mailers have got. And so I support them in my role to make sure that we can try to push out and achieve more with that, and try to make sure that we get a slice of the pie, I guess. And I think as cultural services, we'd like to, help and enable other companies and other organisations in Tees Valley to achieve that as well, and that we be that supporting arm to help them become more aspirational. And obviously the cultural partnership, the Middlesbrough Cultural Partnership's developed over the past 2 years, so that's been really great because that's brought so many different Middlesbrough organisations together who are now working together to put out commissions and to achieve new things, and that's just been brilliant because we've done it in smaller forms before, but never before we've had a full sort of partnership, an equal partnership with all these different freelance organisations, bigger organisations, all working together with a common goal and common aim for Middlesbrough and the wider Tees Valley. So again, we're looking at that platform of how that platform can sort of invite more and more people into that, so that actually everybody's on a I guess an equal platform to access arts and that to access all the funding going and access all the information and have the same quality training and sort of information that we have within cultural services, I guess.
I've always been interested in an article that David Byrne wrote about music scenes and when they happen and what needs to be there and in place. And he always says it's absolutely crucial to have, without the really small grassroots DIY organisations being maintained and sustained, the top falls, because that's where you hone your craft. It's at the tiny little venues that you go to, like places like Disgraceland, where in pre-COVID days, you couldn't get many people in, and now it's going to be so hard. But I went to one gig there, and Chaz Thomas played, and people were just so, it was just so brilliant. There was maybe 10 of us there, and he got to the end of his set, and we're like, let's start again. And so he just kind of played stuff that he hadn't played for a while, or stuff he'd written, and he got that direct feedback off the audience there. And it's that kind of thing where people can hone their craft. So it's like people can build up their confidence and move like from venue to venue. So I just think, absolutely key to support everyone at every level. And that's what makes a whole kind of sustainable way of hopefully going into the future. Apart from also, I think we need to buy up all the buildings as well. When we can talk about that another time. So obviously you're really, you've made your life, it's really interesting because a lot of people, there's different stories of people like as kids being forced to not to do the arts and coming back to it, and other people that steadfastly said, no, I'm doing the arts and you can't stop me. And that's really, all these different parts. But the thing is, it's like it's like the mountain in Close Encounters. It's like we're all being driven towards art in a kind of unstoppable way. So why do you think that is? Like for you, why is it art that you want to be involved with more than anything? And I guess you've covered quite a lot about what the role it can play in society. So why, what is it that has made you focus your life on the art?
It's probably the same for everybody. It's just that love of doing that, and it's kind of my other half always says to me, some people work to live, and others work, live to work. And he was like, you're one of those people. And he's like, you need a hobby because all you do is this. And I was like, yes, it's because I love it, and it's what I do, and it's kind of, and it's just inside you, I think, isn't it? And it's just, it's everything. It's all around us, and it's everything that we do, and I just couldn't imagine a world without that. And it's what drives me. And for example, when you're doing like funding bids and stuff like that, if I was doing funding bids for something really quite dull and boring, I don't think I'd be any good at it, because it's the excitement that gets me going, and it's the love of something. And I get far too excited. I'm like, we can do this, and that's what drives me, I think. And
I think the way I think of it in my own head is because I do genuinely enjoy doing accounts. But I wouldn't go and camp somewhere for the weekend for an accountancy festival,
I just think it takes you out into your own little world sometimes. Like I love, I've been, obviously, like last year, obviously so many festivals got cancelled, and it's so sad. And obviously I've been starting to take when I'm not actually working on events and things, taking my kids to these things and just having that, it's kind of like you're in your own little world. It takes you out of that normality, doesn't it? And you can just sit amongst just such weird and wonderful things and creative stuff that all the family can get involved in, and it just takes you away from, I guess, the day-to-day stuff, doesn't it? It gives you that little bit of freedom. And
I remember one of our first interviews with Sean Shacker, him saying exactly the same time. It's like, the constant pressure, like to be somewhere, to be punctual, to be on time, to be dressed like this, to be doing that. Like, sometimes you just need something that takes you out of that, and you don't think about all that stuff. And I think
it's just a play, isn't it? And everybody, no matter whether you're a child or an adult, actually you just want to be able to just play and enjoy yourself. And just, like we went to a festival, like the last festival we went to before everything got cancelled, and my other half doesn't work in the arts, and I drag him along to all sorts, and it's just great to see his reaction, getting involved in like printmaking and things like that, which you'd never normally do. And he's like, this is great. And he's like, when are we booking again? As soon as we literally left the festival, he's like, when are the tickets back on sale? And it's great to see that kind of attitude from, I guess, from people who haven't, I've been lucky, I've worked in the arts most of my adult life, and bringing people into that who haven't experienced those things, and they're sort of seeing their experiences and what it does for them, and building that joy as well. It's just
that excitement of being a child, being free to do what you want, like, because who cares, honestly? Who cares if you're splashing about in a bit of paint? Whatever you're doing, just get on with it, enjoy it. Lisa, it's been lovely to talk to you, and I hope outdoors is going to happen at least this year, so very much so I'll see you out there in the real world at some point this year.
Yes, I will, let's hope.
Take care.
Thank you.